And we're back. So this is chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess. Acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. And then these are some of my notes. In our culture, it is difficult for us to acknowledge the value of opposites. It seems we strive to glorify the good, the beautiful, the pleasurable, and negate the bad, the ugly, and the painful. This section reminds us that the one cannot exist without the other. They are mutually dependent. So maybe we should not be so quick to consider or praise. So if you haven't listened to some of my other videos, you may have noticed in this, the second chapter is where you first may have noticed the she pronoun being used. So as I had mentioned in this translation, Stephen Mitchell has alternated the use of the pronoun with he and she, because in the Chinese language that the original translation, I don't know if it was Mandarin or Cantonese, or they don't make a distinction. I'm no expert on the language, but I know at least that there isn't a language called Chinese. But in any way, so it's interesting for a text to be read this way, because he's not making a well, I guess in a way it is a political choice. But I guess the point that he's trying to make is that in the Chinese language, it isn't assumed that the master is a he. I guess maybe it is assumed, but the language doesn't exclude women. And obviously he felt that because the Tao Te Ching is probably the most feminine of all religious texts in its approach to life. I guess it's appropriate that he would use the pronoun she very often. So this comes up quite a bit, and it may sound a little bit odd maybe to feminist ears that the world should be divided into masculine and feminine qualities. But this really lies at the heart of Taoist thought. So yin is, so you have the symbol of the yin yang, of the yin and yang. And yin is typically thought to be the white, represented by the white portion, and the black is so white represents the male, black the female. So those are kind of like the first two distinctions of how the universe is divided. So other qualities that are associated with the white side, so white male, just thinking how that sounds politically. So it's expanding energy, it's dry, it's active, it would be hard, aggressive, warm, and then the black would symbolize feminine, softness, receptiveness, moist, slowness, depth. So, I mean, there's hundreds of qualities, but then it's not to say that men only have masculine qualities and women only have feminine qualities. So, I mean, I'm sure that feminist critique would maybe say, I mean, why do we need to separate reality using feminine and masculine terms? And I guess that's not really a topic that I want to really get into. This is how it's presented, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So anyway, I think I will leave it at that. But I guess what's important to realize is that the most important aspect of that symbol is that even though, you know, you have white on one side and black on the other side, there's a spot of black in the white and a spot of white in the black, so that all elements of one side of the duality contains the other. So within even the most masculine quality or the most yin quality is an aspect of yang. And that concept that translates to a lot. So Taoism, Chinese philosophy in general, very similar to Indian philosophy, but I think in some sense, maybe a little bit more complete. Well, I shouldn't say more complete, but it's different. So India obviously being the origin of Hinduism, which I recently learned is actually a bit of a term of convenience. So there's really no such religion as Hinduism per se. Hindus themselves refer to their religion as Santana Dharma, which I guess loosely translates to the eternal teaching, or the eternal or the timeless teaching. So Dharma has many meanings: virtue, teaching, truth. But the idea is that this teaching has always existed, and it's based on the Vedas, which are a vast library of so in the West, our Bible is, we look at it as one book, one big book, but it's actually a compilation of many books. But when you compare the Bible to the Vedic literature, I mean, I don't really have a concept of how much bigger the library is, like the number of texts that Hindus would consider part of their canon, but it's pretty massive. Like, it's not something that any one person could be familiar with. So I forget the point that I was trying to make with that, but all right, so that was chapter 2. And I guess I just wanted to mention something about this whole idea of opposites. So, I mean, one of the difficult things that I guess Western philosophy gets kind of wrapped up in is, again, using language to talk about things like the beginning of the universe or what existed before the universe existed. So because our thought is so influenced by language and the language that we use, we think that we're asking a valid question. What existed before the universe existed, or what existed before the universe existed. But the very tool that we're using to solve this problem is the one that's actually causing the problem. So I'm getting a better appreciation now that losing my thought again. Anyway, it's gone now. All right, maybe I will end it there. So that was chapter 2. So as you can see, the actual chapters are very short. And if I'm not mistaken, there are 100 and... I don't think it's 108, but anyway. See you next time for chapter 3. Later.